It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. It's 3 a.m. Who do you want answering the phone?
Where is the hour-by-hour schedule of the President of the United States on September the 11th, 2012? It has never been released.
What did he do, and when did he do it?
3:40 p.m. in Washington, D.C., 9:40 Benghazi time, terrorists attack the U.S. mission in Benghazi. 3:50, 9:50 p.m. Benghazi time, Ambassador Chris Stevens frantically calls his deputy Greg Hicks in Tripoli, saying, "Greg, we're under attack." 4:05 p.m., 20 minutes after Stevens' last message, the president, while visiting wounded warriors at Walter Reed, is informed of the attack. 4:40 p.m., the president departs Bethesda, Maryland on Marine One, landing on the South Lawn at 4:50 p.m.
What we don't know is what the president did, who he met with or spoke to during the attack that lasted 7.5 hours. Are there any reports of the president ever making it to the Situation Room where a decision could be made to send in the cavalry?
You know, it's a great question. That's one of the questions that should be answered.
At 5 that evening, 11 p.m. Benghazi time, outgoing Defense Secretary Panetta and General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, meet for 30 minutes with the president at the White House. That is the last communication between the commander-in-chief and his top military officials on the night of the attack. This official photo, which carries no timestamp, is later released showing the president also getting, quote, briefed on the situation in the Middle East and North Africa by his national security advisor, the vice president, and the White House chief of staff. 8 p.m., 2 a.m. Benghazi time. 3 hours after Stevens' last call, the embassy in Tripoli receives another deeply disturbing call from the same cell phone. This time, it's an Arab-speaking man informing Tripoli that the ambassador is dead. An hour later, 11:15 p.m., 5:15 a.m. in Benghazi, and less than 15 minutes after a rescue team arrived on scene from Tripoli, former SEALs Ty Woods and Glenn Dougherty are killed in a mortar attack on the CIA annex. 12:30 a.m. September 12, 6:30 a.m. Benghazi time, escorted by friendly Libyan forces, all U.S. government personnel are evacuated from the annex to the Benghazi airport. 2:20 p.m., the president departs Andrews Air Force Base en route to Las Vegas, Nevada for a scheduled fundraiser. Critics are horrified by the insensitivity the move shows.
There was an apparent attack going on in Benghazi, and I informed the president of that fact, and he at that point directed both myself and General Dempsey to do everything we needed to do to try to protect lives there.
Did you have any further communications with him that night?
No.
Did you have any other further communications? Did he ever call you that night to say, how are things going? What's going on? Where's the consulate?
No.
Did you communicate with anyone else at the White House that night?
No.
No one else called you to say, how are things going?
No.
You talked to the President of the United States one time. So you talked to him for 30 minutes, one time, and you never talked to him again. Neither one of you.
Until afterwards.
Until after the attack was over.
That's right.
Are you surprised that the President of the United States never called you, Secretary Panetta, and say, how's it going?
You know, normally in these situations,
did he know the level of threat?
Let me finish the answer. We were deploying the forces. He knew we were deploying the forces. He was being kept updated.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but I got limited time. We didn't deploy any forces. My question to you is, during that 8-hour period, did the president show any curiosity about how's this going? What kind of assets do you have helping these people? Did he ever make that phone call?
Look, There is no question in my mind that the President of the United States was concerned about American lives.
Well, all due respect, I don't believe that's a credible statement if he never called and asked you, are we helping these people? What's happening to them?
As a former
we have
chief,
a second round,
as a former
and we'll
chief
take
of staff
it up
to the President.
I'm not going to stop until the American people know what their commander-in-chief did for 8 hours, and thus far, all we know is he had a 15-minute conversation.
Where was Obama? Why was he disengaged? And we still don't have an answer to that. What was he doing that night? Where was he? And I'm sorry to say here, folks, but the president telling Panetta, well, do whatever you have to do. That's too vague and open-ended and wide open. Do what you have to do to save lives. And it's like Obama, okay, I'm going to wash my hands. Do what you have to do. I got to go. And he was then off the grid, folks, for the rest of the night. And this is why they deflected all this focus. This is why they tried to shift everybody's attention to the video or other distractions. They were trying to keep any inquiries into Obama's whereabouts from being made. And, of course, the media dutifully complied. They didn't ask those questions. Do you have any further communications with him that night? No. Where was he? Why wasn't he reachable?
What the president's involvement is, where he was giving his direction that night, makes all the difference in the world as to whether there could have been a rescue mission. The president, by saying to the Secretary of Defense and to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the 5 o'clock meeting that afternoon, said, do what you have to do, you guys handle it. When the president said that, he was closing the door to any rescue mission because they don't commit U.S. troops abroad. They don't commit U.S. troops into another country unless they have the direct say-so and authorization of the president.
Why don't we know about his whereabouts now?
Well, I think that's what they're trying to cover up, is because you don't know what happened.
What would be so offensive about where he was?
Involved. Let me tell you, I mean, when I talked to my old boss, Henry Kissinger, he said to me, you know, any administration we had been part of, within minutes, you would have had, within 15 minutes, there would have been a White House Situation Working Group dealing with that situation as it was ongoing.
Where was the commander-in-chief when all this? The one man who can authorize and order troops to move above everybody and instantly is commander-in-chief. Where was he for these hours when the fight was raging? Has anybody asked it? Has anybody answered that?
Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
There was no 3 a.m. phone call. The president did, however, have a phone call at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, he got a briefing at 5 o'clock in the afternoon about what was going on, and then as Secretary Panetta said, there was no other contact, not with the president. Now, Dennis McDonough, his chief of staff, said, oh, he was briefed all during the night. Well, how was he briefed? It was made very clear in testimony there were no phone calls either way. We had people out there dying, and people that he committed there, that he sent there, and there were no phone calls either way. It's absolutely incredible. Now, I do know he had a very busy campaign appearance the next day in Las Vegas. I'm sure he wanted to look good for that, for heaven's sake.
I think, Congressman, I think what we're learning, unfortunately, is at that point, the priority of the White House and the president was to get reelected because we were just outside of, that big November election.
And we just don't know where the president was or Tom Donilon was after 8 o'clock. And despite what the Spinmeister said a couple of weeks ago, it does matter what room he was in. And the Situation Room is not like any other room.
What the families and supporters of the men who died in Benghazi are asking for is a specific review of the White House response to the attacks. A TikTok as comprehensive as the one that followed the raid on Osama bin Laden. What and when the president was doing, if anything, and who he was speaking with, if anyone. And on those points, the critics say there should be nothing to hide. Geraldo.
They're fair questions, Greg. Thanks.
What would explain why an accounting, or what we call in our business a TikTok, of the president's schedule or his whereabouts or account, why would that not be out at the moment?
Well, certainly one reason it would not be out is that the White House doesn't want it out. wherever he was has to be something they're hiding.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
You don't think he was at like a Jay-Z dinner or something that night?
No, I don't. I think he was at home at the White House.
Sleepy sleep?
Yep, and they cannot put him in the room. That's the critical thing. It's not where he was. Why are they keeping him out of the room? They're keeping him out of the room because then the president knows exactly what was going on in Benghazi. Never, ever get off the fact that they were running guns. Never get off that fact. Because that explains why they can't explain where he was. He has to be someplace in the White House, but he's not at a Jay-Z thing. Because that would look really bad. Somebody was dying and then he wasn't there. And so they've already set up that he was there at the White House, but he wasn't fundraising. Okay, because remember, that was the important thing back then. He wasn't definitely not fundraising, because that would have been not until the next day. Mm-hmm. That would have been crass. He was definitely not fundraising. So he wasn't fundraising. So where was he? Well, it was September 11th. It was crass to put him at anything. So he had to be at home. Now, why wouldn't you be downstairs in the Situation Room? That's the logical place to put him. But they didn't put him in the Situation Room at all from the very beginning. Why? Well, because that way they can distance him from this killing. Why don't you send anybody in? Because then you have witnesses of what was going on. Why isn't the president in the Situation Room when he's upstairs going to sleepy sleep? Why do they make it such a point? Why would Leon Panetta come out and say what he said during an election, that the president, there was no phone calls, there was no emails, there was no phone calls, no contact with anyone in the White House all night long? Why? Why? To keep him clean of the real crime. Even the death of the ambassador, I am sorry to say, is not the real crime. The one they're trying to cover up is not the ambassador's death. It is running guns to the Muslim Brotherhood. Period.
When the president isn't consulted for, well, it's longer than 8 hours, from 5 p.m. till the next day, where was he? What was he doing? Why was he disengaged? I was told early on, that's where the focus of this is going to end up before it's all said and done.